Reagan believed in strength, but he also believed in peace. He said, "As for the enemies of freedom, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people." Across the Middle East, the story is the same. Christians are either persecuted or on the run. In Sudan, Miriam Ibrahim is on the run, but I understand she may be here today. Is that right? For her beliefs, she was sentenced to death by the Muslim courts of Sudan. Miriam was raised by a Christian mother and married a Christian man. At the time of her arrest, she had a young son and was pregnant with another. Because Miriam's father was Muslim, though, Islamic law considers Miriam and her son to be Muslim. So when she was arrested, Miriam and her young son were taken to prison. Miriam was forced to give birth in prison, shackled to the floor. When Miriam's Muslim brother was asked about her sentence, he replied, "If she repents and returns to our Islamic faith, then we are a family. But if she refuses, she should be executed." After her conviction, Miriam was given a chance to recant her Christianity and save her life. She refused, declaring, "I am a Christian and I will remain a Christian." That's true bravery. Luckily, Miriam was granted asylum, and she's now here in the United States. But there are many more like her. Across the globe, Christians are under attack, as if we lived in the Middle Ages, or as if we lived under early pagan Roman rule. In Libya, once the secular dictator Gaddafi fell, radical jihadists raided Christian churches, rounding up hundreds of Christians, accusing them of being missionaries because they possessed Bibles and crosses. Many were tortured, and one Christian died while being tortured. In Pakistan, Asia Bibi, a Christian, sits on death row for blasphemy. She says it all began when she drew water from a Muslim villager's well. As she was filling her bowl of water, the crowd formed, chanting, "Death! Death to the Christian!" She pleaded for her life. She was pelted with stones, punched in the face, drugged through the streets. The local imam finally intervened, only to say, "If you don't want to die, you must convert to Islam." The crowd descended on her, beating her with sticks. Finally, the police stopped her attackers, only to arrest her. For several years now, Asia Bibi has been on death row for the alleged crime of blasphemy. Until Asia Bibi is freed, Pakistan should not receive a penny of U.S. aid. Not a penny should go to any nation that persecutes or kills Christians. I can't imagine why we would do this. And you would think, I believe the American public believes this, there's no way we should do this. And you'd think your representatives up here would get it, but they don't. This summer I introduced legislation to stop foreign aid to any country that has the death penalty or life in prison for Christians or other religions for making religious freedom choices. Both Republican and Democrats voted against this amendment overwhelmingly. The committee voted 16-2 to continue this indiscriminate aid to these countries regardless of whether they persecute Christians. I don't think anybody out in America really agrees with that, and that's why you really have to stand up and send a message to them up here, because they're not listening. Our foreign policy also must let us stand with Israel. That's why this year I introduced a bill to cut off all aid to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas until they lay down their arms, stop firing their rockets, and publicly recognize Israel's right to exist. The irony is impossible to escape. Our tax dollars, your tax dollars, may well end up funding Hamas, allowing them to buy more missiles with your money. My bill was opposed by Republican and Democrat leaders. Instead, this week, Congress voted to arm the Islamic rebels in Syria. One group of these so-called moderate rebels has stated publicly that when they're done with Assad, they're coming for Israel. They'll take back the Golan Heights. That's next on their list. I asked on the Senate floor last week, I said, to those of you who wish to arm these Islamic rebels, tell me who among them will recognize Israel's right to exist. Silence. No one answered because not one of these Islamic rebels will ever think about recognizing Israel. In country after country, mobs burn the American flag and chant "Death to America." Congress's response? Congress responds by sending more of your money to these haters of Christianity. I say not one penny more to any nation that is burning our flag. It's time to put a stop to this madness. Re-examine our foreign policy, halt all aid to Islamic radicals in Syria, Egypt, and elsewhere, and take a good hard look at what our foreign policy has done. You and I must and should stand with our fellow Christians in the Middle East, around the world. But that does not necessarily mean war, and it certainly does not mean arming both sides in every conflict. As Christians, you have to lay it out simple to the people in Washington. They'll never get it. As Christians, we understand that the right to life and freedom of religion pre-exist all government. These rights are not granted to man by other men. These rights are granted to us by our Creator. God help us in these troubling times to make wise decisions, to make moral decisions, and to listen to the voice of God that lives and breathes and resides in us all. I try to remember each day Corinthians 3:17. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. I hope Christians everywhere will remember that the reverse is true. Where there is liberty, there is always plenty of space for God. Thank you very much for having me.